In the future, Earth is contaminated, and survival is only possible in bunkers, but one guy decides to step outside. In 2149, 9 years after a devastating chemical war, life on Earth was forever changed. Lakes and rivers dried up, governments collapsed, and billions of people lost their lives to the toxic air. The lucky few who managed to hide in specially designed bunkers survived. Darwin was one of them, but this new life was far from ideal. Like the other survivors, Darwin spent all his time glued to his computer. Every morning, an AI scanned Darwin's retina and then displayed information about his mother, who had long been in hibernation in another similar bunker. Darwin still held on to hope that his mother would someday respond. He left her an electronic message, apologizing for not being able to talk to her, as flashes of his childhood memories ran through his mind. The AI then suggested Darwin take a shower. Weakened by a lack of physical activity, he struggled to get up from his chair. In just a few seconds, he took an ultrasonic shower before returning to his seat and getting back to work. After the war, all survivors were required to trade their shelter, food, and entertainment for remote labor, mining rare minerals used to build more advanced bunkers for the government. After a while, the AI announced a 10-minute lunch break. A virtual hostess appeared on the screen offering various dishes, and Darwin ordered fish sticks and chicken a la king. While he waited for his meal, the news played on the screen. The report said that sensors still detected high contamination levels on the Earth's surface, so self-isolation remained mandatory. Finally, Darwin's food arrived through a special hatch, but within minutes, the break was over. He returned to his monotonous work, thinking about how he was drifting further and further away from his pre-war life. The meaningless existence in the bunker weighed heavily on him. The only escape for the survivors was playing computer games, which they were allowed to do after work, but even games couldn't fill the growing emptiness in Darwin's soul. Before bed, he checked on his mother once again, but she was still silent. He leaned back in his chair and fell asleep thinking of the past. He dreamt over and over about the day he last saw his mother. She had to leave him all alone in the bunker, giving him a chance to live a longer life. The next morning, the AI woke Darwin up again, and he faced another uneventful day in front of the computer screen. But suddenly, in the middle of his workday, Darwin heard a dog barking outside. It seemed impossible. He turned the camera and spotted a real dog, which someone quickly hid in the bushes. Darwin tried to make sense of what he just saw, but his virtual supervisor abruptly interrupted him, demanding that he turn the camera back to his work immediately. If he didn't comply, he was warned that he could easily be replaced by someone else willing to do the job. That night, a storm started raging outside. Darwin woke up to a loud clap of thunder and peered through the small window in the door. Suddenly, a lightning strike hit his bunker, knocking out the power. The AI immediately switched to the backup battery to keep life support running for a while. Panicking, Darwin slammed the emergency call button, but no one outside responded to his pleas for help. 2 days passed, and the battery charge was rapidly draining, forcing the AI to shut down all systems except for air purification. Darwin nervously looked out the window, still clinging to the hope that help would arrive. As the final minutes ticked down before the battery died and the air filtration stopped, he finally made the decision to leave the bunker. He put on a respirator and pressed the door release button, but it was no use, it wasn't functioning. Struggling, he lifted the door manually. Darwin stepped outside, managing just a few steps before his respirator signaled a drop in oxygen levels. Terrified of the poisoned air, he rushed back to the bunker and tried to close the door, but it was jammed. At that very moment, the AI announced that the battery was fully drained, and all life support and air filtration systems had shut down. Darwin, realizing he was out of options, began to accept his fate. But then he noticed something incredible. He could still breathe without the filtration system. Now, Darwin gathered the few essentials he could find and set off on a mission to find his mother. He exited the shelter once more, his steps slow and unsteady, having not walked more than a few meters in the past 9 years. After some time, he reached a communication station and desperately tried to contact his mother, but his attempts were in vain. Darwin refused to give up. For days, he trudged through abandoned sectors of the desolate land under the scorching sun without food or water. One day, weakened and on the verge of collapse, Darwin heard the bark of the familiar dog. Following the dog, he entered a dense green forest buzzing with insects. It became clear that life outside had been possible for quite some time. Exhausted, Darwin stumbled deeper into the forest before finally collapsing and falling asleep. The next morning, he was woken by the dog's barking and the hum of insects. As he regained his senses, he spotted the dog nearby, along with its owner, a girl named Dar, who warily asked who he was. After 9 years of silence, Darwin had lost the ability to speak, leaving him unable to respond. Fearing that this mute stranger could be dangerous, Dar decided to leave, but Darwin rushed after her. Alarmed, Dar activated a homemade alert system to warn her family, who lived with her in an illegal community outside the bunkers. Leland, Dar's mother, immediately ordered the younger children to hide and prepared herself to confront the unexpected visitor. Before long, Dar returned to the camp, and she and Leland watched Darwin's cautious approach. They pitied his heartless state, but worried that the authorities might be looking for him, which could lead them to their hidden community. Despite their concerns, Leland decided to offer shelter to the exhausted traveler and called the children out from their hiding spots. But Darwin, still overwhelmed by fear, hesitates and keeps his distance. Lillian and Dar leave a piece of bread at a safe distance from the cabin, and Darwin devours it hungrily. Then they offer him a bowl of soup, each time setting it slightly closer. Slowly, Darwin begins to trust his new acquaintances and eventually sits down at the table with them. Curious about who he is and where he came from, Lillian and Dar try to communicate with him. Darwin signals that he can't speak because he's used to interacting only through his computer. Lillian notes that they don't have a computer, and seeing that Darwin understands her, she invites him to stay the night in their cabin. Still visibly frightened, Darwin seems hesitant, so Lillian suggests they bring a mattress outside for him, which helps to calm him down a bit. As Darwin lies down, he thinks about how Lillian's family is the first group of people he's met in 9 years, and how, for the first time in a long while, he feels a sense of safety. Yet he knows he can't stay with them for long. His priority is still finding his mother. The next morning at breakfast, Darwin tastes tea for the first time. While Lillian mentions that she wants to ask him some questions about his life, she gently asks Darwin to place his hands on the table as if typing on a keyboard. Her adopted son, Stephen, places his hands over Darwin's and reads out the answers. Lillian's family learns that Darwin's bunker lost power during the storm, and that his name is Darwin. During the day, Darwin watches the younger children play games. In the evening, they use their unique method of communication again, and Darwin asks what happened to his mother. Dar, concerned, asks for clarification, and Darwin explains that he has been waiting since childhood for his mother to send help, but no one ever came for him. Dar assures him that they have no information about his mother, and suggests that he rest a little longer before continuing his search. In the morning, Darwin takes in the sight of a regular shower, and for the first time in many years, steps under running water. Soaking wet, he returns to Lillian's family, and they all laugh warmly at the sight of him taking a shower fully clothed. Dar rushes to help him, explaining how to shower properly, while Lillian brings him fresh clothes. After his wash, Darwin approaches Dar and Stephen, who are working in the garden. Dar pauses her work to tell Darwin that he looks great, but their moment is suddenly interrupted by suspicious sounds coming from the forest. This worries Stephen, but Dar reassures him that there's nothing to fear. She then asks Darwin if he truly wants to leave them right now, but he doesn't know how to respond. Dar begins teaching him common gestures and facial expressions for yes, no, and I don't know. After a bit of practice, Dar asks him again if he'd like to stay a little longer, and Darwin nods affirmatively. In the following days, Dar and Darwin spend more and more time together. She teaches her new friend various skills such as planting seeds and drawing in the sand. More importantly, Darwin finally begins to speak. At first, he narrates each of his actions, but soon his speech becomes more confident. As they communicate, Darwin starts to experience a feeling he hasn't felt before: infatuation. It's clear that Dar shares this budding connection. Meanwhile, a drone circles ominously overhead, threatening to shatter their newfound peace at any moment. One day, after lunch, they decide to have a dance party. Dar teaches Darwin the basic moves of the waltz, and he shows his friends some funny moves from video games. Afterward, Dar and Darwin take a walk in the forest. The girl notes that for someone who hasn't spoken in 9 years, he's doing remarkably well, but he admits that his throat still hurts from the unfamiliar effort, even though he could talk when he lived with his mother. Dar shares stories about her father, who was sent to live by the ocean at the start of the war, where he and others were supposed to create new families to help humanity rebuild. However, after chemical weapons were used, isolation became mandatory, and all the families were separated. Darwin's father faced a similar fate. One day, while the family is busy improving their cabin, one of Lillian's daughters, Beth, starts worrying that the police, who are surely searching for Darwin, will track them down. Lillian hopes everything will be fine, but Beth gets upset with her mother for prioritizing the fugitive's fate over their family's safety. That evening, they light a campfire, and Beth expresses her concerns again about being found. Lillian reminds everyone to stay cautious, as they are all criminals being hunted by the police. Finally, Darwin realizes that his presence in the camp threatens their quiet life. The next day, Darwin joins Lillian's family on his first trip to the river. Soon, he and Dara separate from the others and swim together. Then, the girl takes him to the top of a mountain. They spend time talking while lying in the grass, gazing at the sky. Dar shares that once, a couple stayed together even after having children, instead of splitting up to form new families. Darwin likes the idea of living with a loved one for a lifetime, and Dar remarks that first, one must find that special person. Dar also wonders whether their meeting was mere coincidence, or if Darwin found their camp for a reason. After a while, the family returns to their camp singing. Stephen keeps a close watch for any danger as they cautiously cross the road. Meanwhile, Beth starts arguing with Dara and Stephen over trivial matters, causing her red scarf to slip from her braid. The scarf remains on the road, quickly catching the attention of a drone that begins to chase after Lillian's family. Suddenly, Stephen hears the telltale buzz of the drone and shouts for everyone to hide. In a panic, the family scatters and hides behind rocks, waiting out the danger. Fortunately, the drone does not spot the intruders and flies on. When the family returns home, Beth begins to complain that they can no longer live peacefully because of Darwin. Lillian acknowledges that they need to be cautious, but Beth insists that the drone got so close because it was tracking Darwin, meaning he needs to leave. Darwin reassures them that no one has been following him, and Lillian reminds them that they faced dangerous situations before without him. However, for now they should not leave the camp. That night, Dara decides to visit Darwin but finds his mattress empty. She searches for him outside and discovers he has made the decision to leave, so as not to endanger their family. In tears, Dara tries to convince him to stay, assuring him they will find better hiding spots. But Darwin insists he cannot forgive himself if something happens to her and her family. Dara feels hurt, accusing Darwin of being like all men for planning to leave her, and she runs back into the house. The next day, Darwin bids farewell to Lillian's family, but Dara does not come out to see him. He thanks Lillian and tells her that he and his mother will create a similar camp, asking her to tell Dara that he loves her. Dar cries alone in the forest, watching as Darwin walks away from their home. With renewed strength, the young man sets out to find his mother's bunker, located a 2-day journey from the forest. Darwin traverses familiar but long-abandoned paths, hiding from the ever-present drones. Soon, he finds another communication station and tries to reach his mother again, this time using the key that Lillian gave him before he left. Fortunately, it works, and his mother accepts the connection request. Darwin informs her that he is safe and very close to her bunker. Once he arrives, he asks her to open the door and reassures her not to worry about the poisoned air, as it is actually safe. However, his mother is reluctant to meet him, and instead presses the alarm button. A few minutes later, a drone flies to the bunker, demanding that Darwin confirm his identity. After scanning his retina, the drone asks him to explain why he left the bunker and where he has been all this time. Darwin quickly concocts a story, saying that he has been with his mother, who simply forgot to mention his presence. He also assures the drone that his mother pressed the alarm button upon hearing a strange rustling outside, which is why he came out of the bunker. This explanation satisfies the operator controlling the drone from another bunker, who seems to have no influence. He advises Darwin to be careful, wishes him a good day, and then directs the drone away. Darwin continues to plead with his mother to let him in, and finally, the door opens. He discovers that after 9 years of isolation, his mother has become wild and barely recognizes him. He explains that life outside the bunker is indeed possible, with clean air and bright sunlight. Darwin asks for permission to use her computer and hacks into the government archives. It turns out that numerous surveillance cameras captured his journey and his life with Lillian's family. Darwin is bewildered by how the police could have seen all this and not come for them, realizing that no one is actually watching them. Understanding that his mother has no interest in this new life, he says goodbye and kisses her farewell, finally managing to elicit a smile from the reclusive woman. Darwin realizes that his mother will remain in the bunker even after the collapse of the world government, just like thousands of other survivors. However, the rest of the people will finally be able to start a new life in freedom. Soon, the supervisor controlling the drone spots Darwin but refuses to follow the computer's commands and lets him go, planning to start a new life outside the bunker. Finally, Darwin returns to the forest, where he finds Dar sitting on the edge of a cliff. She cannot contain her happiness, as men who leave usually do not return, and looks forward to their new life together without the fear of being caught. Darwin fully integrates into Lillian's family, and together they remove the camouflage from their home, joyfully welcoming the long-awaited freedom. So that's it. Hope you enjoy this story. Subscribe and press the bell icon for more videos.